intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
Tatum drives down and throws it down. Wow!
To throw, rainbows it down the right side for Kyle Pitts. He's got it. He's there. Touchdown! Oh my!
Oh my indeed. Welcome back everyone to the Sports Bits podcast with Moko, here to talk about all things Florida Gators football and Boston Celtics. Follow me on Twitter at Sports Bits Pod to get updates on when I upload. I will also be tweeting out live takes and reactions of the games being played that day, or any new updates that come out. I'll probably retweet it or even tweet it out myself, my own like personal take on it. But yeah, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just subscribe. And if you're on Apple, especially if you're on Apple, leave that 5-star review. That'd be much appreciated. And if you're on YouTube, just subscribe, share the podcast, like it, whatever you got to do. Let's get this podcast out there, get some names, get some heads to the podcast. And yeah, that's really it. Let's go right into the content. There's not much just because of the All-Star break. So we had one game to talk about, which is the Raptors game. And like, there's a few things I want to talk about that. Let's go into that first. So my first thing was the Celtics defense was completely atrocious without, and the not to mention the Raptors didn't have Fred VanVleet or Pascal Siakam, and the team defense during that game was 127, which is atrocious for most teams. And like, what can you comment on that about, especially with the Raptors without having VanVleet and Siakam?
I mean, overall, it was just like an extremely poor defensive game, but from both sides, which is why it was such a high scoring game. But I mean, like the Raptors bench like barely went deep at all. Like you had the starting five, and you had three people coming off the bench who played with Chris Boucher and Terrence Davis playing like around like 25 minutes on average from both of them combined. Or 30 minutes, my apologies. And you know, it was kind of depressing to see from the Raptors, considering that their main players are pretty much out in Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet. But I did like the performance that the Celtics bench showed. They had a lot of depth in that game, and you know, it pulled out well for them in the end. Like we said earlier, though, it was just a poor defensive game overall. But glad that the Celtics pulled out the dub, and hopefully in the second half of the season they'll pull out some more.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that Reed is not here today, so it's just going to be me and James, and it's just and like there's not much content to talk about, but it's more important that Reed was here for later, and we'll get into that later because he's a Nets fan, and you probably know what the news is if you're listening to this about the Nets. But yeah, I mean, you brought up Chris Boucher, which is great because I was going to bring him up and say he scored 30 points off the bench, which is a great stat line for a bench player, especially since Pascal Siakam was out, and he's getting a lot of the I guess power forward minutes compared to, I guess there's no really other serviceable power forward on that team. So I guess Chris Boucher did get his like shining moment, you know, I would say that. And also you brought up the depth, you know, 8 Celtics players scored over 10 points, which was solid. You know, we had like 3 guys who scored 10, one guy 14 on the bench. You know, of course our starters did pretty well. And it's just like, that's the overall thing. I also looked at like the pacing of the game, like the plus minuses. I'm starting to get more into that. And it looks like the Raptors were actually keeping up in the first half, like looking at the point totals by the end of that half. And it looks like everyone was playing pretty well, and then it just completely just went downhill for the Raptors at the second half. And I don't know what happened there. I didn't think they would like fall off that quick, but I guess they did. You know, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
Just that, like, I mean, it was just shocking that they pretty much were leading when going into halftime, and you know, they just completely dropped the ball in the third quarter, and they picked it back up in the fourth, but they arguably could have easily won this game had they played better in the third quarter. I mean, they only had 22 points compared to the Celtics 35. So, you know, with that just being said, you can kind of tell where the game went after that. I mean, the Celtics were relatively consistent throughout all 4 quarters. With staying above 30 points each quarter. So, I mean, the fact that the Raptors scored 22 is just like what happened in the locker room after halftime, man. I mean, it was just kind of mind-boggling, and watching it as well as just looking back at the stats.
I mean, minus how well they'd scored, like having an 8-man deep bench, but I think we did really well keeping up and also scoring really well, like showing our bench players showed that they can score efficiently, you know, when they need to. So I think that's a good sign for the future. But yeah, there's not
Okay.
really much else to talk about unless you have any final comments. Like if you shake your head if you don't got anything. No.
I mean, like, yeah, nah, not really.
Yeah. It's exactly what I thought. But I think more importantly, I want to move into the All-Star break because that we didn't really have any games after the Raptors game, and we'll have a game
Yeah.
tonight that me and Reed are actually going to watch. It's Nets versus Celtics, and we're probably going to go super hard on that.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, it's going to be a funny game. Like whoever wins probably going to like, banter the crap out of tonight. But let's go into the All-Star break and talk about the performance of Brown and Tatum during the All-Star game. I think that's the only thing I really want to highlight. The 3-point contest was kind of a easy dub by Curry. But I think I'm going to compare their stats real quick, and it just makes a few points about them that like I've been trying to push. So Jaylen Brown actually got 26 minutes playing on LeBron's team, and Jason Tatum got 17 minutes on Durant's team. And they both scored, equally at 22 for Brown, 21 for Tatum. But the shooting was very different. So Jaylen Brown was 8 for 12 regular field goal, and then 5 for 7 at 3-point, compared to Tatum's 9 for 16 and 3 for 9 at 3-point. And that just, that shows that my point of that just Brown is just a scorer. And I think he's a really good scoring piece. Like he's not really a leader, but he's a really good like secondary complementary piece. And not to mention looking at their other stats, like Jaylen Brown only had 5 rebounds, 2 steals that were like, that's the only stat lines that seem to pop out compared to Tatum's 7 assists and 4 steals. That shows they can do other things other than score. But I think Tatum's not really that scoring type. That's why he complements Brown in his play style. And this kind of shows it because this is playing against like all-star, superstar level guys. This is like the stat lines they put up against those type of guys. Defense, they don't play as hard in the All-Star game, but this is like a good like little insight. It's not like truly what they would actually perform against. But I think this is like a good like first look of how they would play against like these type of players.
Yeah, and especially since like since they changed the formatting of the All-Star game to where it's like they have this set score per quarter, it makes it a lot more enjoyable and a lot for the players as well as the fans because they've had a lot of trouble with trying to gain traction with the All-Star game in previous years. And since they changed the formatting to it, it's more intense played because everybody missed that. And, back in the 2000s, all these guys were, going balls to the wall on every play to make sure that they won the game, even if it was just, a BS All-Star game. Now it's a lot more enjoyable to watch because we're seeing that come back a little bit. So I think that, the way that Jaylen Brown played, I totally agree. I mean, it is clear that he's the pure scorer, and not that he can't do anything else on top of that. But I mean, he's definitely his threat is scoring, and with Jason Tatum, I think that that's why he's the star of the Celtics. He can facilitate a little bit more. He can grab a lot of boards. He can most likely get a triple double if he really tried hard enough to get it. But I mean, that's clearly not his main focus on like some other players in the NBA, Westbrook. Yeah, I mean, I think that Tatum, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel with him. He's starting to develop a lot more and more quickly, and he's gaining a lot more traction throughout each season that he's getting better. And him having Jaylen Brown as a second guy or his second option on the court, like they should be improving a lot. And I think that hopefully, which we'll talk about later, that it'll coincide with the second half of the season.
Yeah, not to mention that Tatum performed really well having less minutes. He had, let me do the math, 9 less minutes than Brown. Yeah. And he had comparable numbers, even though his shooting efficiency was not as high. Mm-hmm. But, it's fine. Tatum's not really meant to be that all type of scorer like Harden or even Jaylen Brown, if you want to even put his name out there. But yeah, that's really all I really picked out from the All-Star game. I mean, that's like, it's just good to see Celtic guys performing well in the All-Star game to show that they have this potential to play really well against all-star type players and superstar type players. So
yeah, dunk contest was trash.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we've been spoiled with Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine the past few years, and that's probably why. Like even last year's dunk contest was better, just because like we've never seen this stuff before. But I think there's some of the guys they need to get more creative. I think they can't just do the normal type of stuff anymore. They got to pull out some crazy stuff or like some, if someone can eventually do it, like a 3-court dunk, which is like almost physically impossible, but if someone does that, I think they automatically win. They should just automatically win.
And Sabonis won the skills challenge.
Yeah, no one cares. Anyway, no one cares. No one cares. Okay, so the main question I want to bring up, especially since it's the end of the All-Star break, is the question of what do the Celtics need to do in the second half of the season to prepare for the playoffs or be ready for the playoffs, especially since we've seen their up and down performance in the first half of the season. James, what is your first thought on what they need to do?
Immediately, my first thought goes to it.
Oh wait, can I pause real
Yeah,
quick?
go
So
for it.
forgot to mention the trade deadline is on March 25th. So they only have 14
That's coming
days to
up.
make, or not 14, not yeah, if they have 14 days to make a legit trade before the trade deadline closes, of course. And we're recording this on the 11th, so they do have 14 days till the 25th.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. It's coming up. But yeah, I mean, the first thing that immediately comes to mind is work on defense and switching and even if you have to go into a zone. I mean, even during the 2018 playoffs when the Raptors went to the finals, they were playing the zone compared to the rest of the teams in the playoffs. So it's like, as long as you can get your defense completely coordinated and set and everybody's comfortable with it, then it will be a lot easier to transition into the offense after that. Because, as much as offense is extremely important in the NBA, defense, I would argue, is more valuable. And if your whole team can come together and have a great defense, then it'll translate into the offense after that, and you'll get a lot more fast break points. You'll get a lot more steals. You'll get a lot less fouling. There a lot of more turnovers from the opposing team. It translates to the offensive game on the other side of the court. So that's the first one that comes to mind. The second one that comes to mind.
Also put out the example of the Miami Heat 2020 team. Really good defense translates to, and they're a fast team, so their fast break points were off the charts compared to most teams. Exactly. And I think that's where the Celtics shine. Personally, I think they don't really run too many set offenses. They really like to I think they get most of their efficient points come from the fast break. So I think that actually could be a recipe for success if Brad Stevens wants to pursue that.
Definitely. And then the other thing that I would also add is to get your young guys involved, man. I mean, they've been doing their part throughout the season, like guys like Peyton Pritchard, guys like Robert Williams, guys like Grant Williams, all those young guys that are deep into the bench. Get them more involved. Let them play 25 minutes a game, see what they can do and how they work with the stars during the starting lineup, because I think that I'm starting to warm up to how Brad Stevens is coaching this season. But, if you can get those young guys to have good chemistry with the stars, then your whole team is involved at that point, and you can consistently go 10 guys deep a night. And if you're doing that every night, then it's going to be a lot harder for for opposing NBA teams to look at highlight reels and try and see how they can hold them back in some respect. And so if you're playing like 10 guys a night, then it'll be a lot easier to win those type of games because it'll be a lot more unpredictable for more of those players.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at an example, I think it's the 2018 team with Kyrie getting injured and having Terry Rozier step up.
Yeah,
and I think Brad Stevens is we may not see it as much, but I think his strength is working with young guys, putting them in, incorporating those guys in the lineup and utilizing their strengths to the fullest. He's the type of coach where he's played in the college system. So he played for Butler and Gordon Hayward. Yeah. So he knows how to use young guys really well compared to most coaches in the NBA. That's why a lot of rookies get the back end of the stick from every other team, because I don't think the coaches know how to run young guys compared to Brad Stevens. And I think that's his strength, especially when Kyrie went down. And that's why we made that run to the conference championship, Eastern Conference Championship, and almost won. We took it to 7 games against LeBron, which is great to see. And that's also when Tatum and Brown weren't as developed and they were still their raw selves their first couple of years. So I think with maybe Pritchard could be the next Terry Rozier or something like that. We can have
Maybe.
Robert Williams play the center minutes, even though we had Al Horford back in the day, which is, I think, something we miss, having that veteran center, that veteran anchor, and on the defense, like right in the middle of the court.
I know you miss
right in the middle of the front court, of course. But like, I think that's the one thing we're missing. I think Tristan Thompson is a great substitute, and we have Daniel Tice as an offensive center, so we have that. I think we have center covered. Like, it's not like solid, like not having like an AD type or like a Clint Capella. But I think
yeah,
they're
you could do better, but you could do worse.
Yeah. And that's funny enough that like, also thinking about what they could do like before the trade deadline, a lot of rumors have been coming out with them looking into trades for like Jeremy Grant or an Andre Drummond.
Right.
Those type of guys, big men that are like really efficient at what they do, would be also a really good benefit for the Celtics, especially Jeremy Grant. I think if we could pull off a Jeremy Grant trade, I would do it in a heartbeat.
I'd be over the moon. Yeah, I'd be over the moon for that. That would be great. I think that would be the best move that they could do before the trade deadline.
Yeah, he brings offense and defense, especially his defense is really underrated compared to most players. And I think he could really anchor the defense like Al Horford did back in the day. And we can run small ball and have Jeremy Grant at the 5, run Tatum at the 4, Brown at the 3, Smart at the 2, whoever at the 1, Pritchard, whoever. Point being that, or even Kemba, because we're probably not going to be able to trade Kemba, because a lot of people are saying now, like, no one's interested in Kemba now after his performance in the first half of the season. So I think we just got to run with Kemba. I think he's on and off. So like, we just hope he peaks at the right times during the playoffs or even towards the end of the season. That's what I'm hoping for. But we will see, because like, he's really unpredictable. Like, he's not consistent as like Brown or Tatum is relative to most of the players.
For sure.
I mean, there's not really much else I could think of other than, just get the young guys some experience. Make a big time trade if you need to. If not, we just need to find some young guys who really could step up in the playoffs and towards the end of the season. That's really all I can think of right now, unless you have anything else to add to that.
No, I think you basically cleared everything that, and you elaborated a little bit better on what I said as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think you covered everything.
Yeah, I've been following this very closely because like of course, the trade deadline's in 14 days. So I kind of hoping that the Celtics do make a big trade for like a Jeremy Grant type. If not, I think we have potential on the bench. So we'll see how that goes. But let's move on to what's up.
I was just gonna say, and I think it'll be interesting in 2 weeks to talk about all the trades that happen right before the deadline.
Yeah, especially ones that affect the Celtics the most, because that's what I'm worried about. Like if the Nets acquire some crazy player, or like the Bucks acquire some other crazy player, then we're screwed, I think. Like I'm not gonna be a pessimist yet, but like if something happens that like, the Bucks get like, I don't know, not Clint Capella. They need like more of a Yeah, I know. I hope not, but like someone like a really good point, like Alonzo Ball type, maybe for like a facilitator, or like the Nets. Apparently, the Nets are interested in Alonzo Ball, or the Nets or the Knicks are interested in Alonzo Ball.
The Knicks.
Yeah, the Knicks are interested in Alonzo Ball, which will also be a very interesting piece to add to that little chemistry in the backcourt. But we don't know. We'll wait till the trade deadline. We'll talk about all the trades, at least in the East and maybe some in the West, that would affect the Celtics in the future. But yeah, let's bring it on to the 1 minute hot take. And sadly, Reed's not here. This is what I was talking about. We're going to talk about the Blake Griffin signing that the Pistons paid his buyout, and now he was an unrestricted free agent, and now is signing with the Nets. And so my question for the 1 minute hot take is Blake Griffin going to make a difference in the East or even for the Nets in general?
And my answer to that is no. And the only reason why I say that is because Harden, Kyrie, and KD will totally hold down the ship, along with Blake Griffin coming off the bench. He's not going to be doing a lot for them. Yeah, he'll help a little bit, and it's good that he's on the team. First of all, I was shocked to find out that he paid a vet min or he got paid a vet min to join the Nets, and that just shows me how badly he's ring chasing at this point in his career. But I don't think that he'll be a drastic help. The fact that he's turned a lot more into like a shooter type and is taking a lot more threes and like not taking any dunks, like he's become more of an average player in the NBA. And I hate to say that because he was so great back in the early 10s, but it's a shame to see his athletic ability go to waste a little bit. And I hope that we see that a little bit come back with the Nets. But in my opinion, the way that he's been playing for the past couple of years on the Pistons, I don't see a drastic change in the Nets' performance.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny enough that we're talking about Blake Griffin in the 2010s because I was actually a fan of the Clipper team back when they had Lob City with DeAndre, Blake Griffin, and Chris Paul. That was my team next to the Celtics, of course. But, I was a big fan of what they did. Chris Paul being like, he was my type of player, like very good facilitator, great ball handler. He can score really well, like on his spots. And then we had like these two big guys running the front court. And, just seeing him like regress to where he is now is kind of sad just because he's getting older and he's starting to lose that athleticism, that pop he had back in the 2010s, back with the Clippers. And it's just, that's why he's taking more shots. He's like turning into like a veteran like Vince Carter. Like if you look at Vince Carter from back when he was super athletic when he was young, and then now he's like before he retired last year, he was, just that veteran guy, played like 10, 15 minutes, did what he had to do, just trying to keep up. But yeah, like it's kind of sad to see. And like it's going to happen. I think the next player that's going to happen to this, the next player that's going to have the same effect is going to happen to them is Russell Westbrook, just because he was always an athletic guy and he needs that athleticism to be really well. He's keeping up pretty well, like with his regiment and stuff, but I think eventually he'll eventually have to regress. His athleticism is going to eventually take a step down compared to what it used to be.
I agree,
and
unfortunately.
It really does suck, but I think Blake Griffin will be fine on, like, especially as a bench role, like, getting his points that he needs to helping that bench unit out. I think that he'll be a good piece for that, especially because he's only paid the minimum, so it doesn't really hit their cap too much when you're playing those three all-stars, all that money. But yeah, it's great. He's a great complimentary piece, I guess, to add. You can run small ball with him if you really wanted to. You can put Kyrie, Harden, and KD, Blake Griffin at the 5, and you put whoever else on the court. But yeah, I think it could work. I don't think Blake Griffin's going to be as much of an impact as he used to be. He'll just be that solid. I guess he'll be like a better shooting Tristan Thompson if I had to compare it to a Celtics player.
If I had to compare it to a Suns player, I would say that he would be similar to Jay Crowder.
Yeah, Jay Crowder, but way bigger and probably better. I can say they're comparable at defense, I would say. But I think Jay Crowder's more of a perimeter guy compared to Blake Griffin's more of a front court center guy. But they do what they need to do. They have their roles. They know what they have to do to just perform well and not overstep some of the players that are already on that team. I think, as you said, Blake Griffin's ring chasing just because he never won a ring with the Clippers, which really is sad because I was hoping that Clippers Lob City team would win a ring, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And now I think he's trying to solidify his career with a ring, and I think that's good for him. I think he should just get a ring and just retire at this rate.
I agree.
As I don't think actually did Vince Carter ever win a ring?
No? He didn't. I don't think he did.
Oh my God, that's so sad.
He might have won one with Dallas.
No.
I don't think.
Wait, was that when they had Dirk Nowitzki and all that?
Yeah, they beat the Heat.
He might have been on that team. Don't quote me on that, but
yeah, me either.
Yeah, but it was just like those kind of players. It sucks if they don't win a ring, because I think there were, like, at least in my life, he was a big impact on like why I loved basketball, having Lob City. I had like LA Clippers banners and stuff. I had a LA Clippers hat because of how much fun it was to watch that team play. Like seeing that lob up from CP3 to DeAndre Jordan for the slam. It was just so much fun.
Jamal Crawford through the leg.
Oh my God, Jamal Crawford with his handles, like he had better handles than CP3 and just like doing all his stuff. It was so much fun to watch. As I said, that was like the thing that the 2006 Celtics team with Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and the Lob City was the teams that really got me into basketball. And as I said, this is kind of hurting my soul a little bit with Blake Griffin. But hopefully he wins a ring. I'm rooting for him. I'm not rooting for the Nets. I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him as a player. But yeah, that's really it. Unless you have any other comments about Blake Griffin, because
I just hope that he does well for the rest of his career. If he doesn't win a ring this year, then I hope that he stays a little bit longer, and hopefully he doesn't fade like Vince Carter did a little bit. As sad as that was as well for him to retire last year, and no one really wanted to see him retire. We all thought that he was just going to stay in the NBA forever, but they're just those type of players. I mean, the good thing at the end of the day is that we know that they're both going to easily make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, just because not because they won rings, but the impact on the game they had,
exactly,
and like how many hearts they've touched over the years, especially ours. over like from what they did in the NBA. Like they weren't as good as LeBron, but they definitely had a different, more emotional impact on the game than just winning rings. But yeah, that's really it for the podcast. Like hopefully we'll have more stuff to talk about in the next week. Hopefully we'll see some improvement, which is what I'm hoping for after the All-Star break, getting that week's rest, getting that giving Brad Stevens some time to think out his game plan a little bit. And he didn't have to do anything for the All-Star game. So that's good for him. And he can just focus on the team, focus on himself, and maybe we'll see some improvement in the next week. But yeah, that is it for the podcast. I will see y'all next week with the Celtics side of it. But yeah, we're going to move on to the Florida side. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I have two stances I'm going to be talking about with Dan Mullen, and also my question I had on the Late Kick podcast. So if you guys want to check out the Late Kick podcast, I'll talk about it more in the next section. But yeah, I'll see y'all. And we are back. All right, so I have two topics today, actually, because I know I said last week that we were going to talk about just Dan Mullen and his quote-unquote hot seat. But I also have a topic that came up recently because I won a lottery contest to get on the Late Kick podcast with Josh Pate. And I recommend you listen to that because it's on the I'm actually going to pull up right now so I don't say the episode wrong, because I know he was trying to title that something special, and it wasn't really he didn't really think of the title. There it is. So Late Kick Show Owners Association meeting, episode 1. I am actually featured on that about on minute 24, 25-ish. I bring up a really good question that actually stumps him for a little bit, and it's kind of I'm proud of that because I wanted to bring some good tough questions when I came on the show, and especially pertains to Florida. So I will be talking about that question and also assuring my point up, because in that time in the podcast I didn't really articulate my point as well, and also I didn't really have my words formulated correctly, and I didn't really have enough to say about it, and I want to put it on my podcast just to give my full opinion on it. So let's get on the Dan Mullen hot seat first. I mean, everyone's been, I guess criticizing Dan Mullen for his antics in 2020 and also his recruiting. So let's just get all that straight. That, in my opinion, I think he's a good coach for what he is, and his recruiting can improve, and also his antics were, and what I said in the podcast was I think his antics were, some of it I liked and some of it I didn't like. So let's start there. So the stuff I did like, for example, some of the stuff that he gets energized about, with the team, getting you see him before he goes in the halftime, energizing the crowd, coming out of the halftime, energizing the crowd, being that high energy coach. And also you see that in his press conferences, and especially with the Darth Gator thing that you guys may or may not know about. You should look up Darth Gator on YouTube and you'll see it. He just straight up just dressed up as Darth Vader during the Halloween game last 2020 season. And, I find that really funny and enjoyable. It just adds to his personality, and that's how I see Dan Mullen is, and how he is as a coach, which is kind of fun and brings a new fresh light to Florida, not being all just serious. We can have a Nick Saban type, culture, which is very strict, process driven, but I feel that sucks the energy. Of course, you win championships, that's where your energy comes from. But I feel if you can't have all the winning without some of the fun, that's how I see it. But there's some things I really want to critique about with him when it came to game day comments, and also some of the antics he did pull during the game. So we can highlight the first one, which is the Missouri incident, where he was actually somewhat inciting the players to actually basically inciting the brawl, and bringing more players out on the bench that he should have, instead of actually trying to calm people down and try to pull his guys away and look like the better person and show that his team that, yeah, we should not be getting involved in this, and we should be the better person and come out in the second half stronger and play harder to show that we are frustrated at this, incident. I think it was a hit on Kyle Trask, what was the thing that incited all the violence, or the fight. But I really think Dan Mullen should have been the better man. I think he'll know for the future. I think he will learn from this and be a better person about containing this kind of type of stuff if it happens. Because when their quarterback gets hit, everyone gets mad. The O-line first goes up there to protect their quarterback, but then the whole team, if it escalates to that, will come out and defend their quarterback. So that's one thing Dan Mullen really needs to hopefully calm their team down and be able to keep everything civilized, and hopefully just use that as energy and fuel to push the team to say they just started messing with our quarterback. We need to fight back and play better in the next half, so we can show that we are mad and we can beat this team handily. That that's the way to show it, not insinuating or continuing to insinuate a fight that happens on the field. And another thing that really made me mad was his comment that his last game during the Cotton Bowl game, that was the second big I guess antic that really just made me mad. But his comments about the on Bull saying like, our team played 3 weeks ago. Like this wasn't, our team or whatever. And that just like really made me really mad as a Florida fan because I feel like I'm also raised as a Patriots fan. So like having that Bill Belichick mindset, we play every game as it is the Super Bowl or something of equivalent. Just because also we take things game by game. We don't look into the future. We don't look at don't look into the national championship mid-season like I think some of the players did. I think we should install that. Yeah, as I said, like I would like some of the process stuff that Nick Saban has, but I also have some of the fun that Dan Mullen brings. That would be probably the balance I would bring out. And yeah, that just really made me mad. And like I can understand why a lot of Florida fans are really mad about Dan Mullen's antics and what he said and what he did last year. But I think he'll learn from it, especially since he probably, like a lot of people are saying, especially Josh Pate, who actually got to like give me a little insight on it. But like I think he thought that he wasn't going to be there. He thought he was going to go to the NFL because like his contract didn't get renewed and he has 3 more years. And usually by now, your contract would be extended if you were, doing well enough. But I think this 2020 season really set him back, and he has to really prove himself in the next couple of years to get that contract extension if Florida wants to continue having Dan Mullen as their coach. And I mean, I would like him to be our coach, but also I've heard a lot of like Georgia insiders say like, are they more afraid of Dan Mullen or a different coach? They're probably more afraid of a different coach just because, we know what Dan Mullen like puts out and like how to game plan against Dan Mullen, but you don't know what another coach could do with the talent and resources that Florida has. And especially if they figure it out like Urban Meyer did, that would scare a lot of Georgia fans if that ever happens, and get another type of Urban Meyer type who's a really good recruiter but also a really good X and O's type coach. And I mean, I'm trying to like think how I would say this, but yeah, I think we can win. We can do the same thing again, especially if Dan Mullen improves his recruiting. I think that would be a tremendous leap in his like I guess status as a coach, and that would also probably like bring him up to the official first place in the coaching rankings in Florida. If I had to rank coaches, so I think with everything included, I could potentially say Manny Diaz is number 1. You can argue that, but also I will get into that in the next part of the podcast. But for right now, I think Dan Mullen's a solid coach, and he just needs to improve in his recruiting. And I think he'll be a solid coach. And if he does, like, get to a good recruiting point in his career, like getting good at, like he has, like Wellesley McGriff and Jules Montanar, who are really good recruiters, and I know they're going to recruit hard. Crime Dog is going to recruit especially hard because that's what he's especially known for, and everyone respects Wellesley McGriff for being a great recruiter and a great coach in the secondary. So I think he's doing the right moves. I think the next step would be looking at Todd Grantham. If Todd Grantham cannot prove himself to win or like to produce a decent defense, every year, minus 2020, that's when you have to look at Todd Grantham, and then you would look at the head coach, of course. That's usually the series of events. So you look at the assistants, and then you look at the head coach, then you look or the assistant coaches, like the offensive defensive coordinators. Correction, you look at the assistant coaches, then the offensive defensive coordinators, then you would look at the head coach. So I think the next step is Todd Grantham if the defense continues to struggle, and then we look at Dan Mullen, because I think if Dan Mullen, and I think also we should look at Dan Mullen. His hot seat will get a lot hotter if he can't recruit as well. Like his recruiting classes like progressively decreases. Like he went from 9 to 13 this year, and if he can't get above at least I think 13 or top 10, then we should be really concerned as recruiting wise. But yeah, that's really like my stance on it. I mean, I like him. I mean, I like him for like what he brought to Florida, but also he needs to take some next steps to become a better head coach, to be on the same level as Ryan Day, Urban Meyer, Dabo Sweeney. I wouldn't say he will ever reach Nick Saban status, but I think he could definitely, with his like attitude and culture, I think he could definitely bring a Dabo Sweeney type culture that it's like very family, very fun. Still instill that work ethic to Florida, but also have a little fun with it, and have these coaches give these players a little bit of like leeway when it comes to like social media, and having a little more fun with their off-field stuff that they do. But yeah, overall, I think I like Dan Mullen. We'll hopefully see that he improves next year. with everything, and with especially his players now, because most of the players that we bring back in 2021 are his players. So hopefully we can see some improvement from last year's 8-4 season. So I'm gonna move on to the question I asked on the Late Kick podcast, and I want to actually give my firm stance on it and actually formulate my words compared to what I was given a short amount of time, and I didn't really have I had to really think on my toes on the answer I wanted to give Josh. But the question was, what was more likely to happen, or what is more likely to happen? Miami overtaking Florida as the number 1 team, or FSU overtaking Miami as the number 2 team? So I'm just gonna go a little deeper into that. He said that he thinks Miami will overtake Florida first over FSU taking Miami. So I am coming into the stance of looking at potential with Mike Norvell and the potential with actually Dan Mullen, because I think Dan Mullen can hold that number 1 spot if he improves his recruiting. I think once he gets a year or two more into him, I think he'll be a better recruiter. And I'm always going to pull for Dan Mullen because I am a Florida Gator fan and I run a Florida Gators podcast. But I think he'll definitely improve and also be on the level, at least on the level of Matty Diaz. If he gets on the same level as Matty Diaz in recruiting, I think we'll be solid as a program, because especially how good Dan Mullen is during the season and game day. He's one of the best coaches I've seen in a while. I love what he does, how he game plans. So I think that's going to keep him solid at number 1 until he gets his recruiting fixed. And if Matty Diaz somehow gets acquires more talent than Dan Mullen over the next few years, then definitely Miami will overtake, because you can just out-talent Florida at that rate. Even though we saw with Alabama versus Florida last year that you can game plan against talent with Dan Mullen, and especially if you have a good quarterback behind. So if you have a good Heisman level quarterback and Dan Mullen's game planning, it definitely can be competitive and you can definitely have a chance to win. But we can't rely on that all the time. So we need to have a good amount of talent on our team to be able to compete against teams with a little bit more talent, like a Miami or Alabama, for example. But my stance is my answer to that was I would think to see FSU over Miami in the next how many years you want to put it on, however Mike Norvell does it, in recruiting, X's and O's, whatever. But I think I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt just because we haven't seen him long enough in FSU, and I think he has potential there. I don't want to we have the set data points with Manny Diaz and Miami, but I think FSU has a chance, and especially you saw their recent recruiting class, that they aren't doing too bad in recruiting relative to the nation. I'm actually going to pull that up real quick, so I'm not saying it, but I think they're not doing too bad relative to what what I remember from watching the recruiting and stuff. But yeah, I don't think they're doing too bad, and I think eventually once they get enough talent, and they could rely on the transfer market. They could, but I don't know how well they can do it compared to Florida and Miami, who actually pull more of the transfers than Florida State. They're actually okay. I looked at it right now. They're 23rd, and I think that's pretty good considering I think their last recruiting class was actually way lower, if I remember right. Yeah, no, actually they were about the same. They're 22nd, so I think they're around that. But I think give them a few more years, they'll be up there in the top 15, top 20, guaranteed top 20, and maybe probably pushing top 15. And yeah, I think they'll be able to overtake Miami, especially. I don't think Manny Diaz has the chance to gain longevity in Miami. I think he's doing a really good job so far. And the reason why I just want to pull this point, it seems a little weak, but this is just my gut feeling based on potential, but also I'll go into another point later. But this is also another thing about Manny Diaz's recruiting in 2021. His 2 5-stars were from the same school, and they were probably pulling for each other to go to the same school. And I think that's how they landed the 2 5-stars they did, which is a good way to recruit. You should get your buddies that are all 5-stars, try to go to the same school. But I would also say, how would you be able to recruit solo 5-stars to come to Miami and get more 5-stars what Ohio State does, or a Clemson or an Alabama does? They're relying on just word to mouth type of thing. They're not individually recruiting these 5-stars well. So I'd say it's about the same as Florida. So I think their recruiting is on par, but I think Manny Diaz is a step higher than Dan Mullen. But then when it comes to the next part, which I look at is X's and O's, Dan Mullen out coaches everybody. And I think Mike Norvell has a chance, especially once he gets his guys in there, and especially when he has like a year or two more. I think he'll be able to put his game plan into action and be able to utilize his talents to the fullest potential and be able to, do better than he has in the past compared to his past records. But yeah, I think he has potential there as with X's and O's. I think Manny Diaz has shown what he has, like his highest potential, especially since he had Derek King, like an amazing quarterback behind the helm. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's doing really well. Like I feel like he hasn't recruited. I don't think he's recruited his own quarterback yet. I think he's been mainly using Derek King. I don't want to like say that's set in stone, but I'm thinking I can't remember any like his last time that he's recruited a top level quarterback, like example Florida recruited Emory Jones, and I think the same with actually Mike Norvell because they just got the transfer of Mackenzie Milton, which is probably going to be their starting quarterback next year. So I don't really know. Actually, maybe there's a lot of questions with the Florida teams just because you see that I've seen this like graph that going around all over social media with all the big national podcasting and news sites that all like the level of talent in Florida that stays in Florida, like it goes to all the schools in Florida, has been steadily declining. Ever since whatever year they marked it, it's always been declining. But they see like the kids who are in Florida see Alabama success, Clemson success, Ohio State success, and they want to go join that and be a part of that and be trained by some of the best in the industry like Nick Saban. And there's no pull to stay home. Everyone says they want to stay home, but there's no reason. Like, I guess there is reasons to stay home, but there's no like solid like competitive reason because you can compete somewhere else and like win championships and show off your skills on a big team on a national level. You still have, Florida and Miami as national, like, teams, like, you're on national TV, but, like, you don't get to, like, get that pull that, like, I was, like, at Alabama, saying that you were, like, at Alabama or Clemson. I was on that championship level competing team, and, like, that really, like, opens the eyes for some, recruiters in the NFL and stuff. So, yeah, the teams in Florida really need to improve their recruiting and keep the guys home, like I said a couple weeks ago. Create a wall around Florida, just like what Mac Brown has done around North Carolina, and try to hold all those North Carolina recruits in. I feel like the three Florida schools need to hold their talent in state, and create a wall around Florida to be able to hold those kids in and be able to recruit all the guys in Florida, and also pick guys out from like Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, all those guys, and bring them to Florida to acquire more talent and just be on the level of Nick Saban as in the sense of talent. That's the thing they need to do. It's a lot harder because Florida's a lot bigger of a state, and there's a lot more talent that is nationally, recognized and also like looked at by every single school. So it's a lot harder to hold that compared to North Carolina. But I think since there's 3 schools there, I think there's a chance they could do that and recruit really well. So yeah, and then I talked about potential already, but I think Mike Norvell has a better chance potential wise than Manny Diaz, because I think we've seen what capabilities Manny Diaz has, but we haven't seen it from Mike Norvell yet. That's what I'm holding on to. That's why my argument. I'm going off potential, as I said. Like, I'm not going off like set data points like Manny Diaz has or Dan Mullen has. I think Mike Norvell is the new kid in the group, and I think he'll eventually take few steps up to compete on a high level in the state of Florida. Even win some games against Miami because they're both in the same conference. And especially since Florida State plays Florida every year, we'll see how their progress is compared to Florida, which is a very competitive team. They have to play Georgia every year and every SEC team. So I think if they get competitive with Florida again and they show that they're talented, like by the time they have to play Florida at the end of the year every year, that'll show that'll like just I guess prove my point later. I maybe come back to this point, like this is just a hot take I have on this question I posed. But yeah, I really think Florida State has the capabilities to come back to what they were in 2013. I think it was 2013 when they had Jameis Winston and all that, when they won the national championship. They have the chance, and they've won recently compared to Miami has the last time they won a national championship, which I think is 2002. Don't quote me on that. I'm actually gonna look that up right now just so I don't, say the wrong thing. National championship. They last time they won one was in 2001. There you go. Not 2002, 2001. So they definitely, I guess FSU does have that recency bias in that they have won more recently than Florida and Miami, because Florida has the last one they won was in 2008 with Tim Tebow. So I guess like it all relies on whoever gets the star / Heisman level quarterback first. It seems like, because it seems like every team in Florida has a chance to win the national championship, especially with the talent they acquire in Florida every year. They just need that Heisman level quarterback, just like Florida had last year, to have a chance to win. Especially since now we have a lot more big teams to worry about. Like, example, I've been saying this again: Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, and then of course we have a new player in Oklahoma that's been acquiring a lot of talent recently in the transfer portal. That could be another threat for these Florida teams to try to make a national championship run. So, in conclusion, I think FSU will overtake Miami as the number 2 team in Florida, and Miami they'll still be good. I'm not going to say they're going to fall, but I think they're going to be really good. I think Florida State will be better than them. So I think Miami will still be really good. I think they're not going to like exponentially increase as much as I think FSU and Mike Norvell will do. And I think they'll eventually hit the 2 spot. I don't think they're going to pass Florida's 1, but I think they'll definitely be able to be a number 2 in the state of Florida. But yeah, that's the end of, that's like, I just wanted to clear up some of my opinions on those 2 topics that get talked about a lot in the national media stage. Well, mainly the Dan Mullen thing, but also like talking about the state of Florida. And I just wanted to clear up my opinion on that. But yeah, that's all it is. And I will see y'all next week. I don't know what I'm going to be talking about next week, but yeah, I'll come with it, whatever news comes out of Florida, especially with the press conferences and spring practice. I'll definitely talk about that. But yeah, until next week, guys, peace.